welcome again, as I say, to Tom Slater. Let's just talk very briefly about Huw Edwards, because I want to get to a caller, Jason, who has been waiting very patiently on the line, and then I want to get back talking about working from home and all of that as well. But in terms of Huw Edwards just getting a 6-month suspended sentence. But crucially, as a lawyer we spoke to, Liam Cottrey, pointed out, no sexual harm prevention order. The key thing about that is it restricts what someone who has been convicted of these crimes, looking at 41 images of child abuse, child sex abuse, including the children as young as 7 years old, that basically it restricts your ability to use the internet. So you can use the internet at home, you can use it on your iPad, on your phone, whatever it is, but it's going to be monitored. You're not allowed to delete anything, not allowed to delete your history, any evidence of that. That's it. You've breached the terms of your licence. Effectively, you will go to prison. Now, he's got a suspended sentence of 6 months for 2 years. That would be on him for 2 years. It seems to me quite bizarre that the magistrate at Westminster Magistrates Court yesterday decided that he did not bear enough of a risk, or no risk at all, that would justify that.
And certainly, according to your previous guest who was talking about this, that struck him as someone who had represented people in very similar circumstances, being found guilty of very similar crimes, that this extra protection, this extra order wasn't issued, given that it was a suspended sentence. We don't know for sure, but at the same time, it would certainly be of a piece with how this story has been dealt with from the very beginning, which is that when it was very early on and the Sun's original allegations were made, there was a refusal to believe that there was even a story. That we didn't know then what we know now, but still, people coming out to bat. And I think there has been a general sense over this case that because he's a respectable BBC man, and that because some of the people who were digging up dirt on him happened to come from more right-of-centre politics, then there wasn't much to be talking about.
We don't know the politics of the journalists on The Sun who were doing their job. And again, the only reason any of these stories about Huw Edwards have ever come out originally was actually about a 17-year-old who was paid 35 grand to, was because the parents went to the BBC and they did absolutely nothing, the BBC, so they went to The Sun to publicise this, to talk about it, and it is just appalling how the BBC has handled this. They're still trying to, claw back 200 grand that was paid in salary to Huw Edwards when he wasn't on air, but had already been charged with these serious charges. And the story has changed to the BBC a couple of times, that they didn't know that these were such serious charges. They didn't know he was going to plead guilty. And then we heard the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davies, say to his Lord Select Committee last week that yes, that he was horrified, and obviously, they weren't allowed to reveal the charges. They weren't allowed to, they were told by the police to keep this secret. And you just think, so you did know what the charges were, you carried on paying this guy.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things where there's obviously a lot of anger from outside the BBC, but also I'm sure within it as well, given the fact that that was another under-discussed part of this whole scandal, was that there were various allegations made from within the corporation themselves, from much lower-ranking producers and staff members and so on, who felt that they had not been listened to either. Not felt that, they weren't. Absolutely, so this is something which there's a lot of blame to go all the way
manipulative behaviour by somebody who was using his position of trust, and the BBC continued to give him that position of trust in the same way that Jimmy Savile was continued to give that position of trust when everyone, and I mean everyone, knew what he was doing to children. It is just shocking, isn't it? Let's get to the phone lines. Jason is in Wiltshire. He's called up on 0344 499 1000. Jason, I know that a lot of people in the media want us to move on, but I think an awful lot of us, particularly parents, can't move on from this story.
No, I was going to say, the first thing I want to say is, thank goodness I finally got through.
I finally got you on it. You've been waiting for a while. I do apologise for that.
I'm on first name terms, I think, with your people in the offices for ringing me back, putting it down, ringing me back.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But it doesn't matter. What I'm going to say is there's a couple of words it's left me with this. I'm very embarrassed and I'm very shocked and dismayed as what's actually happened with Huw Edwards.
Yeah.
How can somebody that's been done for child images and paedophilia get what he's got, and then you have someone standing on a street protesting their rights against asylum seekers or against over the girls that's been stabbed? In hindsight, say I want to give them 3 years in prison. I have not seen hindsight do anything like that with Huw Edwards. So we've got two-tier policing, we have two-tier everything, and this country is just a complete embarrassment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it is two-tier, and again, even if you just compare people with, who just written something on Facebook or on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, compared with him looking at images of 7-year-old children being sexually abused. I mean, to argue that one of those is more serious than the other and get it that wrong is terrifying.
well, you've only got to hold or stand in the street and hold the wrong flag up, and the next thing is you're branded a right-wing extremist, and you know, you've got to have 3 years in prison. And how he's got what he got, especially
as when we talked to our lawyer Liam Cotchery a bit earlier, this idea that, you know, well, in the riots they wanted to make, you know, short, sharp, you know, get straight to court, start sentencing people, put people off, basically make them realise, you ain't going to get away with this. And you can understand that in the early days, but they're still giving people those really tough sentences now. And people who I've defended already, you know, for something they've written on Twitter, you know, they're facing 2 years behind bars if charges and prosecution is continues. And yet there was real harm done by what Huw Edwards did.
Yeah, all I can say is, well, I reckon he must have had some pretty good lawyers to get what he's got. He's been backed by the BBC, but again, the British Broadcasting Corporation, I'm embarrassed to say that I'm anything to do with it.
Yeah, well, the fact that we have to fund it, indeed, I think a lot of people feel that way. Jason, I so appreciate it. I'm so glad you got through. Thank you very much indeed, Jason, there. I mean, again, Tom said that there's no question at all. The BBC still has a lot of questions to answer this. I have no doubt at all we won't get to the bottom of it. Look, we know from whether it was Jimmy Savile, all these other cases, we know, you know, they're busy sacking someone for sending some text messages to female colleagues. I don't know whether they were appropriate, inappropriate, I don't know. But we're talking about, you know, adults, you know, sending inappropriate messages. It's not the same thing. But yet we've seen cover up and cover up again, you know, over the Diana interview that brought about, you know, the big, you know, Diana Gate, you know, stuff. You know, Martin Bashir, the cover up over that as well of his blatant wrongdoing. It is just extraordinary how much the BBC, like every other public institution in this country, their first instinct is always cover it up, brush it under the carpet and hope it'll go away. And that is always almost the bigger crime. And in a way, I think also it's just sort of blundering from one crisis to the other. It's not that there's some kind of great conspiracy within the BBC to shelter nefarious predators, but what sort of happens is... I don't know, you know, but when there comes a point when there's enough... Oh, no, absolutely. But then you also see overreaction in other cases where it seems like to try and demonstrate that they're taking this seriously now, to try and make up for clear-cut past failings. They overreact in one instance or underreact in another. I think the big problem is the BBC, because it has this kind of halo around it as far as a lot of people in the kind of great and good are concerned, it tends to shield them from criticism up until the point where it's impossible to do that anymore because the crimes in question are so serious. And it also creates a kind of siege mentality, I imagine, from the people within it, which is like, we're so under fire, therefore you're more likely to let these things trundle along rather than nip them in the bud and deal with them. So it's a bit like the NHS, the sanctification of the BBC amongst certain sections of the liberal establishment is a big problem when you need accountability and actually exacerbates the problem. Indeed, I mean, I just want to get towards the story in France that emerged just about 10 o'clock today. Everyone must have seen this case. I've thought about covering this case a number of times on the show, but it is so horrific. The details are so horrific that we've kind of shorn away from it just because of the time of day. But the case that has shocked France, and this is involving Dominique Pelicot and 50 more men who are accused of raping Dominique Pelicot's wife, Giselle. She basically discovered only when the police showed her videos, this is what's so extraordinary, that her husband had been for years drugging her to the extent that she was in a coma to all intents and purposes, and inviting complete strangers, sometimes their neighbours as well, to come and rape her while she was in a comatose state. There's no doubt at all those men would have seen that she was in a comatose state. There are videos of him doing it, 50 men on trial with him. Today he appeared in court. The case has been ongoing for a few weeks, but he appeared in court to give evidence himself, and he said, I admit to the charges in their entirety. I'm a rapist, just like all the others in this room. The details he went into in cleaning his wife's body after the attack, the men having to warm their hands, not wearing aftershave or not having a cigarette, parking down the road so that she wouldn't notice. I mean, it's so awful. He also... there was also stuff with his daughter as well, drugging her. The whole story is just monstrous. But he has now admitted drugging his wife. You'd think maybe he could have done that before. There are other issues. There are some question marks over him being involved in other rapes, possibly even a murder accusation has been made against him, which he has denied. But this case is, it is monstrous. And this just shows you there is such depravity in this world, and people need to not be afraid to address it. No, absolutely. And what else do you say other than that? The depths of moral depravity, the depths of
evil, frankly, that someone could be capable of this. And also
he was a perfectly loving, normal husband by day.
And it's almost at least as chilling is the fact that there were so many other individuals, so many other men involved in this that...
some came back a second, third, fourth, fifth time. I know, it's just...
The psychology of that is deeply disturbing.
Does that tie in with the Huw Edwards case as well, where, you know, again, somebody who just appears to be normal and nice, living, absolutely respectable person, and then behind the scenes there is something else really dark going on.
Yeah.
And you know, this feeling that you get, can we trust anybody? At least we're finding out about these things more. At least, you know, with like internet and searches and people doing this horrible stuff and this guy having these videos, no one would know if we didn't have this technology. So there's absolute proof. It's not he said, not she said. There is absolute proof that, you know, this woman was being raped by these complete strangers and by her husband on a regular basis. And the same with Huw Edwards. You know, the pictures were on your phone.
Yeah.
You know, they were there. That perhaps we're actually getting... the internet has been dark, you know, has caused a lot of darkness as in the sharing of these images, but also perhaps as providing evidence that means some of these people who are depraved are being caught.
I'm sure that there's a big part of that. I think it's also a reminder, as you were saying there, that some of these individuals, they can commit so many heinous crimes precisely because there is an element of manipulation, there is an element of front. No one necessarily suspected them. That's a story that we hear time and time again. And while this is always going to be a depraved, evil, tiny minority, there's something about just being aware that some human beings are capable of that, which is always going to shape into their core, I think.
Yeah, exactly, and especially people, the idea that monsters don't look like monsters. Yeah. Can we just, before we go to a break, can we also just get back to, there's some calls coming in as well on this, on Keir Starmer and, you know, Frockgate involving his wife getting £5,000 worth of free clothes. Yesterday, she fronted it out at London Fashion Week, wearing her dark glasses, Anna Wintour style, and an outfit that cost £2,200. Didn't look like it, love, but £2,200 worth of apparently loaned clothes. I don't know why she needed a loan. She'd just been given £5,000 worth of clothes. He got about 20 grand's worth of suits. Where is he buying his suits from? And 6 pairs of glasses. Yeah. He's taken 70-odd grand from Wahid Ali. Apparently, he's a Labour peer. So, of course, he'd need a pass for Downing Street, and, of course, he'd want to give a very, very well-off man... Keir Starmer ain't poor. He's never been poor. Son of a toolmaker. He's never been poor. And he certainly isn't now. And giving this very rich man free clothes. The Labour are fronting this out. Keir Starmer fronting this out. Lady Starmer fronting this out. They have got this horribly wrong, haven't they? They
have. I mean, even sending... Keir Starmer's wife out to Fashion Week in the midst of all of this is such a hilarious basic
Presumably
PR blunder. You would, I'm sure, but you'd get out of it, wouldn't you? Or you'd make sure she was there in like George Asda or something just to try and deflect. Yeah. It's a reminder, I think, that first of all, this government is really bad at politics and really bad at the kind of the fundamentals of trying to get their message across. They don't understand how they're being received. They don't understand when they're being hypocritical.
Do you think
because they think they're the good people.
I was just going to say...
Why would anyone question?
Is that because they have such... And Keir Starmer definitely has this. They have such self-belief in that they are the good people. Tories, nasty scum, as the Deputy Prime Minister has called them. They are the good people. Nigel Farage, fascist, as you know, they think. So they are the good people. They are the nice people. So everything that they do and say must also be good. And that they move in a world where everyone agrees with them. So they don't think anyone's going to criticise it. I think when they see, like, you know, the Times, the Telegraph, the Mail, the Sun front pages, they're completely shocked that anyone takes it any other way.
No, absolutely. And it's also, I think they've just been getting a free ride for too long as well.
Do you think?
All that cash for curtain stuff a few years ago about Carrie Symonds and Lord Brownlow giving loads of money to Boris Johnson and Carrie Johnson to do it.
I thought it was outrageous.
It was ridiculous. But of course, you had the Labour Party now jumping on it. And now when you have it kind of repeated through glasses for passes, they're like, well, what are you talking about? I think it's going to be a good reminder, particularly for a lot of young voters out there, that despite all the moralism from the Labour Party, despite all the virtue signalling, despite all the constant condemnation of the Tory governments when someone so much has passed wind in the wrong direction, they are as out of touch as the Tories, certainly. These people are as surrounded by very wealthy individuals. And also, I think on a lot of these policies, we've seen it with winter fuel allowance, the idea that they're going to come in and it's suddenly going to be a land of...
Save the nation.
...milk and honey. But these people haven't got a clue how to sort out this country.
And it's hypocrisy is one of... There's one thing the British people don't like, it's hypocrisy. That is really... People who push in queues and hypocrisy. We really, really don't... But this
and there's something just weird about the idea, like, when was the last time this man bought his clothes? What items of clothing we're going to find out next? Did he get down to socks, underpants, you know,
and
Arsenal
also, if he's bought his pants from anywhere other than an M&S, then basically they'll put him on a boat to France. That won't be allowed. No, but again, it's the glibness of this. It is just... I think the whole story is utterly bizarre. I would think it was bizarre if the Tories were doing it, and I would criticise them for it, and have done many times when the Tories have done the freebie thing. Again, he doesn't. He barely pays for a ticket to a concert or the or to the football. But again, why does someone want to give you a freebie? Is he your best mate who happens to have a box at the foot? That fair enough. You've got a load of rich mates. I've not got an issue with that. You've been successful in your career. But why is someone else who you don't know giving you a freebie?
Well, I think because he's...
What do they want in return?
Because he's Prime Minister and he wants the access, he wants the connection. And I think if the Labourites hadn't made such a fuss out of all this, it wouldn't be nearly as much of a problem. But because they pretended to be so much different and be so much more down to earth, now it's biting them very
exactly.
hard.
And again, at a time when this very week, yesterday, pensioners, 10 million of them, lost their winter fuel allowance. Now, it's a lovely sunny day today. It won't be in a couple of weeks. It is just extraordinary. They can't see the optics. As you say, they're not just bad at policy, they're bad at the PR as well.